Hello again, and welcome to another edition of Small Caps. Great to have your company. Well, today's show is an exciting story about a pre-existing business which is on the verge of launching an IPO. And unlike many of the stories we share on this forum, it's not about mining or resource, but rather about the beauty business. The Stormeur Group operates Cosmetique, a national beauty and cosmetic clinic, and has been doing so since 2017. But things are about to change, and hopefully for the good. To tell us more, I'm joined by Chair and CEO of the Stormeur Group, Vivek Eranki. Nice to talk to you, Vivek.
Good morning, Peter. Nice to be with you. Thank you for having me.
Our pleasure. Welcome to the show. Let's get this right. Stormeur, or STR, will be the listing company, and Cosmetique is one of the current businesses you're operating. I'm assuming you plan to acquire more and other diverse businesses along the way. We'll get into that in a moment, but want to go back to the beginning. Cosmetique started right here in Perth in 2017. Vivek, what motivated you? You're a former doctor, a GP by trade, as we were discussing off air. What motivated you to establish Cosmetique, and how has the business transformed? Because it's undergone massive growth in only 7 years. So, what was the catalyst for all this?
Well, the story is previous to Cosmetique. I've established, scaled, and successfully divested out of a range of healthcare businesses, from cosmetic dental to general practice to specialist health services. The cosmetic sector itself is very unique. It's an area where there is an ongoing demand, and it's an area where the newer generations of people, as in people who are just recently turning 18, are accepting cosmetic treatments much more than the people that were there before. So we've started in Western Australia in 2017 and successfully scaled from WA to South Australia, New South Wales, Victoria, and Queensland as well.
So was this as planned to start off with beauty clinics and then set up a listing company, or was it did it all just evolve this way?
Well, when we started in this sector, the good news about starting in 2017 is we've seen what works and we've seen what doesn't work. So there's been numerous corporates that scaled and now currently consolidated under bigger companies such as Wesfarmers and KKR. So we've looked at the strengths and the liabilities and leveraged on the strengths of the sector in order to, at this point, come up with a model that can quite easily be copy-pasted. So we've taken the gamble out of scaling the cosmetic business. And now for us to open a new clinic is very much a copy and paste exercise. So for us to go from 17 clinics upwards is essentially the limiting factor is capital. So thus far, we've expanded organically, but with the injection of capital, we'd be able to expand in a predictable manner around the country using the existing business model.
Okay, I've got so many questions, but we'll just keep building along. 17 clinics since 2017. That's roughly 2 a year. Let's not forget COVID in the middle of that, Vivek. So what are the key factors that have driven this impressive growth? And I do note by reading your investor presentation, Australia, this is what was interesting to me, Australia has the highest per capita spend on this industry. We're a small population, 25, 28 million. So what have you been able to sort of tap into that perhaps others haven't?
So Australian cosmetic sector is worth just shy of $1 billion. But what we do is we spend the most per capita compared to anyone else in the world. On top of that, the big advantage from a business perspective is that Australia is a trend follower rather than a trend setter. So this means that we can look at what the Brits are doing, we can look at what the Americans are doing, and easily predict what's going to happen. So the risk of scaling minimizes because we can forward project with a higher degree of certainty. Now, in Australia, just like in UK, the treatments are becoming increasingly popular in the younger demographics. Now, this is the same demographic that is very social media savvy. So these are the same patients, for example, that book online. So that means that from our point of view, we have less overheads in terms of carrying receptionists. They live stream their whole experience. So they come into the clinic, they pull out their phone, they record their whole experience. and they record how it goes afterwards. So what this means from a business perspective is that the cost of patient acquisition or the cost of consumer acquisition is a lot lower if you adapt a digital first and a social media first strategy. And this is something we've leaned into quite a lot. So if you look at our clinics, 80% of our bookings come online. We make it very easy for our customers to book online in order to come and see us.
Well, this is obviously in part demographics driven, Vivek. I know that the 25 to 34 year 25 to 34-year-old category is your peak audience, but your 18 to 25 is also quite strong as well. So I mean, it's interesting to sort of what you said, the notion of getting injectables, and we'll talk about the services you provide in a second, but anything taboo associated with the cosmetic industry is it's kind of fading away, isn't it?
That's correct. If you look at people who are older than, let's say, 45, 55, they typically look at cosmetic treatments much different compared to people who are between the ages of 18 and 35. So 18 and 35 accounts for about 90+% of our patients. And if there was a study done in the UK recently, which showed that this demographic looks at getting cosmetic treatments comparable to getting their nails done or getting their hair done. In other words, they see that as a requirement to maintain their their aesthetic portfolio rather than something that is reserved purely for the rich and famous. And that's how the perception has tilted from the older generations to the newer generations. Now, what we've done is we've essentially made the same treatments accessible and safer. So we've leaned into the compliance aspect and the safety aspect of cosmetic treatments. So we're the first clinic in the country to be accredited under the accreditation scheme. We've implemented very strict training guidelines on all our staff members. And what this basically means is the same treatments can be done in a much more predictable and safer manner in our hands, which provides this demographic who looks at cosmetic treatments as a necessity in a much safer and controlled environment.
All right, so you're leaning into the compliance space. So that's one aspect where you differentiate yourself from your competitors, obviously. But what about in terms of affordability, pricing, and actual services? How do you fare in that area?
Yes. So we look at ourselves as the Bunnings of the cosmetic sector. So what Bunnings did to hardware, what Officeworks did to stationery, we are doing that on the cosmetic side. So we're not franchised, we are all corporate owned. And what this basically means is that our overheads are a lot lower. We are able to negotiate with the suppliers at a corporate level rather than at a store-by-store level. So this means that when patients come to us, they effectively pay the lowest price. Right. And on top of that, just for peace of mind, we also offer a price beat guarantee. So if a patient finds a price somewhere else that's cheaper, we beat it by 10%. And what this basically means is on top of the quality assurance, they also know that they are able to get the same treatment at a much more affordable price.
The problem with Bunnings back in the day, they swallowed up a lot of hardware. Mum and dad's owned hardware stores. Are you fearful or concerned about copping a bit of flack about that kind of approach?
Our plan is to grow by opening up clinics. So we've become very efficient at opening up clinics. We're not here to ruffle any feathers or offend anyone. So what we know works well for us, and we are looking at expanding in those footprints. So, for example, what we know works is being in suburbs that are accessible to people who are of a younger demographic. So these are your outer metropolitan suburbs. So in Perth, an example would be Joondalup. Our typical storefront is about 40 to 60 square meters rather than something bigger. This is good for us because the rent is a lot lower as well. So our plan is to expand within those footprints around the country.
All right, let's talk about the services. Well, let's talk about the rate of returns. Injectables, I'm assuming Botox and fillers, is that right?
That is correct. Yeah, injectables are Botox and fillers.
Okay, laser hair removals. Compared to applying and offering those services, what's the return of investment? I know laser hair removals. I've looked at your prospectus. It's got a big growth opportunity. It's the least part of the business that it's taken up, maybe more guys need to sort of visit your clinics. But yeah, what's the rate of return in comparison to the application of each service, the cost of each service?
So if you look at the gross margins are the highest in laser treatments compared to the injectable treatments. So we started off as an injectables clinic. So for that reason, at this point, our treatment portfolio is injectables heavy. In other words, we get the vast majority of our revenue from injectables. We've introduced laser hair removal in 2023, and it currently accounts for approximately 6% of our treatments. Now, when you look at our competition, the breakdown is either 50% in favor of laser or 75% in favor of laser for clinics that are currently acquired by the corporates. And the reason for this is laser hair removal is much more widely accepted by both males and females. And we are very excited about this. And the reason for this is the margins on laser hair removal significantly higher than injectables. So once you buy the laser machine, there is no ongoing expense for the laser machine. And so, which is why we see margins as high as 99% for laser hair removal. And injectables have a very high and very healthy margin as well at 60%. And hence this is the reason why the company is leaning a lot more into laser hair removal and getting the service up and running. And we are finding it becoming more and more popular, as in we're doing more treatments month on month for our laser hair removal. And one other point of note that you brought up is the increasing acceptance of these treatments among men. So traditionally, injectables are a lot more of a female-orientated treatment modality, but we are finding, especially in Sydney and Melbourne, more and more guys are coming in for their laser hair removal treatments.
Yep. What percentage would men make up of your total clientele across the nation? Have you got any idea?
Yes. So when we look at it as a whole, and I don't have the breakdown for laser versus not laser, it's 2%. But with laser, we're seeing a lot more males compared to injectables booking in. And it's becoming a lot more acceptable for men to undergo laser or any form of hair removal treatments.
Okay. All right. Well, look, you've answered one of my questions, the fact that you're not franchised, you're corporate owned. And are you going to stay true to that? Is that the focus and philosophy moving forward?
Correct. So because we've had the luxury of seeing what works and what doesn't work, we've seen a lot of turbulence in businesses that are franchised, especially in Australia. So we have made a decision early on to stay as a corporate-owned business operations. So even as we expand, all the centers would be owned by the head office. And the reason for this is there is a large number of there's a lot of litigation happening, especially in the franchisor space. I've hardly come across any arrangement where the franchisees and the franchisors are able to see eye to eye. And we avoid all of those dramas by staying 100% corporate owned.
All right. Okay. Well, you've embarked on this growth and expansion plan, and you intend to do this by capital raising. Well, let's get into the money matters part of the interview, Vivek. What's the capital raise target?
We are looking at raising 6 million with 1 million of oversubscriptions.
Okay. And how does Stormeur Limited intend to allocate the funds raised from the IPO?
Yeah. So we are looking at allocating the largest amount of those funds, about approximately more than half those funds, into expansion of our greenfield sites. So this means that the vast majority of the raise will be allocated to what we do best, what we do most competently, and is the least experimental. Now, if you look at how much that equates to, if we were to divide how much the cost of opening a new clinic to the amount allocated to that, we are sitting around 40. So we've given ourselves tremendous amount of runway in order to open a lot more clinics around the country with this. Now, the second biggest allocation of funds go to acquisitions, and we would be looking at acquisitions both domestically and internationally as well. And internationally, we'd be looking at acquisitions in jurisdictions such as Indonesia, Thailand, Philippines, and India. And the reason for this is these are very large population centers where there's a burgeoning middle class and where cosmetic treatments and aesthetic treatments are becoming more and more socially acceptable. So when we go into those jurisdictions, flying the compliance Australian flag, saying that, look, we do things properly and we do things safely, that by our default will give us a competitive edge compared to the clinics that are already there.
All right. So is the acquisition space going to focus and be maintained on the health and beauty space, or are you going to, is it diverse? More, is it going to be, is it interchangeable?
We're not looking at anything experimental, so we would be, again, leveraging what our core competencies are. And our core competency is a cosmetic and aesthetic and beauty space. So those would be the areas where we would be looking at doing acquisitions, both overseas and domestically. At the end of the day, our advantage that comes from our board, that comes from our advisors, is that we have a lot of knowledge in the space. So it wouldn't be a good idea for us to deviate away from there, especially given that the sector that we are in has got tremendous amount of demand, as well as it's growing at double digits year by year.
So how much does it cost you to set up a clinic? About a couple of $100,000? Is that, because if you're saying that 6 million will give you 40 clinics, I'm guessing that's how much for anyone, any potential investor listening, they're probably trying to do this sums in their heads. How much would it cost?
Yeah. So we the rent for our clinics, the lowest one is about 30, and the most expensive one, which is Bondi Junction, is about 80. To fit out a clinic typically costs between $90,000 to $150,000, 90 for your normal clinic and $150,000 for something such as Bondi. In terms of the machines, our machines cost between $30,000 and $40,000 landed, simply because we purchase them in bulk. So realistically, for us to start a new clinic will, depending on where it is, would cost anywhere between $120,000 to $150,000. But however, a lot of landlords now, a lot of corporate landlords are providing very good incentives for us to open within their property. So these are incentives such as paying for the fit out themselves or giving us significant rent-free periods. So we haven't even factored those in.
Okay, so I guess for any aspiring beauty clinicians, they should keep an eye on Stormeur Group's expansion, Cosmetique's expansion, for any possible jobs in the near future.
Yeah, I mean, Cosmetique is an employer of choice. So if you look at the data coming out of Seek, for every nurse job out there for a hospital, they typically get about 15 applicants. For a cosmetic nurse job, they probably get about 20 to 30 applicants, according to the Seek reports. But we are getting between 100 and 300 applicants for every job that we advertise, where we actually name the brand Cosmetique. And the reason for this is we are the only clinic, or one of the only clinics, that mandates that every nurse that joins us undergoes certified external and internal training. On top of that, our internal training, especially for laser safety, is approved by Department of Health as well. So by the time a nurse finishes training with us, they are well equipped to be experts in this field. And because of that, we are an employer of choice. We have the luxury of picking the best of the best nurses in order to treat our patients.
Yeah, okay. All right. For any investor watching right now, listening right now, Vivek, why should they put their dollars into your upcoming IPO?
I mean, the cosmetic sector itself is a sector where the demand is always there. The demand is increasing. It's a sector which has been recession-proof. So when the times are bad, people spend money on wanting to look good because it makes them feel better. When times are good, they spend money on wanting to look good because times are good. We found the sector to be COVID resistant as well. So even in the middle of COVID, people were spending a lot of money on cosmetic services when they're allowed to leave their house, that is. On top of that, this is an early investment opportunity. So we currently have 17 clinics. We are looking at major national expansion using a business model that works. As well as we will be the only pure play cosmetic clinic on ASX. All the others have been acquired by Wesfarmers or Sonic. So there are no other cosmetic clinics on ASX. So in order to get exposure to this field, this is the only entity, basically.
All right. And so go on then. Tell us what's the intended IPO launch date?
We're looking around the 21st of October is when the IPO intended launch date is.
Okay. And how much to buy in per share?
Yep.
Any idea?
We priced the share. Sorry. Yep. We priced the share at 20 cents a share. And the raise is a 6 million raise with 1 million of oversubscriptions, but we are well past the halfway mark already when it comes to the funds to be raised. We've had tremendous amount of interest from various shareholders, and interestingly, the two groups of shareholders that were the first to jump in, as in the first few days, were our patients as well as the medical sector. So a lot of doctors invested into the IPO, along with a lot of our patients as well. So the people that invested into the IPO first are the people that know most about the sector and most about the company, which again is a very good sign.
All right, Vivek. Well, look, we'll look with great anticipation and interest into the next couple of weeks, and we thank you for your time today. Good luck with the cap raise, and look forward to talking to you soon on the next chapter ahead with all things Stormeur and Cosmetique. But in the meantime, thanks for joining us on Small Caps today.
Thank you very much, Peter.